Hi, I'm Duncan Firth, and I'm a participant in the super home movement. I run a small architectural practice called Solar Architecture, and we work on environmental designs around the place. I'm actually talking to you from Bangkok, Thailand, and I work on projects in New Zealand, Southeast Asia, and beyond. Um, so I've been a participant for the super home movement for the last couple of years. And one of the big reasons I joined was because of Bob Burnett. And I think he's such a great guy. And I think he's such a great role model for the industry. So that was primarily why I joined. And then, and then secondary to that, which is just important, is, obviously the kind of technical base that the super home movement comes from. Um, which is, I think it combines, a good combination of uh, professionals that have the experience of what is happening in the industry, and then adapting, I think, realistic performance criterias for houses that fit, budget, um, you know, and economy. So those are the reasons why I'm a part of the super home movement. So yeah, so I have prepared. Well, I think there's three categories that for me that I kind of believe in, and that I think I think they're kind of part of the super home criteria. Well, not criteria, but they're part of the super home belief. But so obviously number one is clients, and each client is different. All clients have the unique quirks. They all have comes in different shapes and sizes, different budgets. So I think, from a designer's point of view, I think it's I mean, whatever we do. I mean, it's always trying our best to work with the right types of people, and working with clients that have the same, well, similar kind of outlooks. Although everyone's different, but I mean, I think one of working with clients that obviously kind of see things, who are after a kind of a more of a long term base in their design outcome. So so obviously, number one is clients, and what their kind of brief requirements are. Number two, which is, this is kind of my own personal belief, and that's looking at environment and site. So for me as a designer, everything that I kind of do comes from the site, and so it's looking at site analysis, and identifying what is unique about that site, in particular the environmental factors. So things like your seasonal sun path, your prevailing winds, what the kind of macro climate issues might be. You might have a quite intense southwesterly wind kind of hammering the site, um, down to the microclimate. And microclimate might be to do with wetlands, and maybe airflow over the wetlands. Um, so it's looking at those factors, orientation, looking at landscape, vegetation. Um, so it's looking at this kind of identifying this kind of pool of ideas that come from the site, and then I think it's amalgamating that with the client, and and the client has to be on board. I think from the outset, and understanding what their site is, and how we can craft architecture from that, and or a super home. Um, so yeah, so I mean, it's really it's just really driving home those ideas of what the site is about. And then I think from that comes quite a creative response in the design. So you're taking these different ideas of site, client, and you're trying to find some type of creative solution that basically combines all these ideas together, and that comes through in the floor plan layout, the sizes of the volumes, and how they might kind of respond to the seasonal sunlight, how they'll naturally heat. how we allow kind of airflow to pass through the house, and how we design an stack effect, which is designing for cooler air entering the house, heats up, exits. So yeah, and I think from that, I mean, every site's different, so we can we get a different solution, and we get a design which is unique to the client, to the site. Um, so yeah, so that's environment, which is number two, and then I think number three is obviously the technical part of it. So I mean, I've always felt that if you design a site, if you design a house correctly to the site, then almost the technical parts of it kind of take care of themselves. And I mean, the reason why I think technical design is number three, is because you know it's I think there is a little bit of an obsession in the industry about the technical aspect, which is really important. But design, when you have the correct types of designs that are designed for sites, um, I just don't. I mean, honestly, I don't think you need to invest in large amounts of technology, which is going to solve these problems. And that's how it works in the projects that I kind of work on. Um, so yeah, I mean, so my houses are passively designed. So I have an obsession with passive solar and passive ventilation, um, and so do my clients. And so I think what we're trying to achieve, typically we do is a daytime temperature of between 20 to 22 degrees, and then nighttime getting down to 17 to 18 degrees. Um, and then looking at an energy index generally of around about 18 kilowatt hours per square meter annually. And that's just, I mean, I think that's just using correct design principles. You're not overly investing in crazy technical aspects of the design, going as in going over the top. It's selecting the correct R values for your site and your climate. And New Zealand, New Zealand is a long skinny country, and it has thousands of different types of climate types. And I mean, I think in the building code there's I think there's about 6 or 7 climate types, so there's quite a few. And so so that means to me that every design that we kind of design has to be unique to that location. And we are kind of accommodating the technical aspects to kind of fit that. So I think what's happened in the industry is that I kind of looking at the bigger picture, I guess from the 1950s up until now. I think that's probably up in the 1950s up until the 2000s. Maybe that was kind of one of the first waves in design where we had designs, quite good architectural designs, and a good understanding of environment. Um, and then I think that of recently, probably in the last 10 years, I think we're in a second wave of design where I think high performance materials have become affordable and accessible to the mainstream market. And that's happened quite quickly in New Zealand. Um, and then I think, then there's, probably almost, within the last couple of years, there's almost a third wave, which is having environmental technical tools, looking at environmental analysis, energy efficient modeling, and incorporating those into the design. So again, my kind of the way that I see things is that these are all primarily tools, particularly energy modeling, environmental analysis. You always need a human to read and interpret that information, and our job is to basically take that information and adapt that to design. I mean, you're not letting technical data drive the design, you're letting it inform the design. And I think that's really important to understand. But I think in the last maybe 5 or so years, I think that I think in the industry, in New Zealand and abroad, I think these tools have become more accessible to a mainstream market. And you don't have to invest thousands of dollars into the software, and you don't have to spend hours and hours doing the kind of modeling. You can quite quickly kind of get some type of analysis and use that to inform your design. So yeah, so that's kind of a synopsis. Yeah, I mean, bespoke is, I mean, I think New Zealanders do like their bespoke buildings, and I think, but we'd like to see more of it. I mean, I guess I mean, the industry is dominated by design and build companies, and in kind of high end architectural, luxury houses. I mean, that's kind of what the industry is dominated by. So I think the trick for designers and architects is looking for affordable ways to deliver these bespoke designs to clients, and that's it's easier said than done. It's and again, I think that's probably one of the in your recent super home awards. I mean, you had a house in there that was had a budget of $500,000, and it's a beautiful house, and I think it's uh you know I think I almost think that should have won the competition, to be honest. But it was, but I think that's a great example of bespoke design and energy efficiency and technical aspects. So I mean, I think that that type of thinking is, I mean, it kind of needs to happen on a more kind of broader kind of level in New Zealand, rather than the kind of the luxury designs that you see, which are beautiful and they're very well done. And then, obviously, the other side to that is the design and build companies, which again, they do produce, good work as well. And it fits, a market. But a believer in design. I think everything should be bespoke. Well, I mean, what I'm finding is that actually a lot of clients, I mean, and this is just has happened post COVID, but it's just so insanely expensive to build in New Zealand at the moment, and what a lot of clients are saying, like, bugger that, we're not going to spend our life savings on building a new house, and they're kind of basically moving in the direction of buying kind of existing buildings and retrofitting them. Well, that's what I'm finding. Well, and it's not just New Zealand. It's Australia as well. So yeah, I mean, I think kind of retrofitting existing buildings is, yeah. I mean, obviously, it makes kind of a lot of sense. I mean, it's always a bit harder, to be honest. If you're working on a kind of an existing building. I mean, it's always easier when you've got a clean slate to deal with. But working on retrofitting, existing buildings, I think that I think it makes good economical sense for clients, who don't necessarily want to go out and build a new build. But I think you know retrofit fits are it's I think probably at the moment that might be kind of one of the kind of main directions the I guess the industry is heading in New Zealand. So um, yeah, I mean, my approach is with retrofits. I mean, you can still you still can have a nice architecturally designed house, and we can still look at natural ventilation, looking at passive solar gain. Although it is a little bit more kind of tricky to do that well, probably with the passive solar to kind of get that in there. And then looking at the technical specifications of what looking at the R values and how we're going to basically create that thermal envelope in that existing kind of retrofit. I mean, yeah, I mean it is a little bit kind of more complicated, but that's okay. I think that that you I think working with a good designer or architect to kind of help you kind of navigate that is yeah is obviously kind of one of the keys to pulling it off. I mean, things like your thickness of the walls. And typically, I mean, if you're renovating, your walls are going to be about 90 millimeters. So which is a little bit harder to kind of get in that kind of additional kind of R value for your walls. And then looking at your insulation, your subfloor insulation. I mean, that's easy enough to do. Your roof, um, your roof is, so we got a local. I don't know if you can. Yeah, so I think it's with retrofits, it's identifying what the kind of the restraints are with kind of wall cavities. Seeing what kind of R values you can fit into your kind of walls and your roof, or finding kind of creative ways to max out those kind of R values.
What about
Uh,
windows?
yeah, also, I mean, I think well, obviously windows are kind of hot. Well, it's a hot topic. And and again, I think windows depend on it depends on the location that you're in, and selecting appropriate kind of types of windows, specifications that fit that kind of climate. But yeah, I mean, obviously condensation is a major issue, particularly in Christchurch. But I don't do work in Christchurch. It's normally kind of from Nelson upwards, and so the types of sites that I generally get are kind of, they have good exposure to kind of sunlight. So, but looking at kind of Windows specifications. Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I think, I mean, all old kind of, all kind of windows need to be, well, and depending on the age of the building, but you're going to be looking at kind of replacing, all your kind of windows, and but again, kind of renovations are, that they are somewhat complex, and the question is, how far do you go on them, and how much money do you invest in them as well. So I mean, a recent kind of renovation project for me was working on an old kind of 1970s batch in Taupo, and and essentially we stripped the building back to its carcass, to its just frame, and then basically went in and fully re-insulated. Well, we actually ripped all the jib out of the building, and it was literally just the bare bones of the house. And we went through and re-insulated everything, and it was all above, you know to a spec that was substantially above building code. I mean, all the windows were replaced. I think the R value that we ended up was about 0.38. So we're looking at using just standard
Oh,
stock kind of double glazing for the house. So yeah, and that's just currently kind of underway at the moment. But yeah, I mean, but again, I think that's adequate for Taupo region. I mean, obviously, if you're in kind of Christchurch, you're going to be looking at different specification for for your windows, and for your house. So recently, the Kirikiri House won a highly commended in the Super Home Movement awards for 2024, which I was very honoured to receive. So the Kirikiri House it's a it's a house where we had a client that um, that was infatuated with the idea of north facing houses, and we were very lucky to have a house that or a site that the outlooks were looking north over kind of rural farmland, and obviously the client and I saw eye to eye on how this house is going how the house is going to work with northern orientation. So it was designing an optimized floor plan where we had your living spaces and bedrooms facing due north, and then on the south side of the house, we had all your service areas, so like your bathrooms, your sewing room, offices, and garage to an extent. So So, it was really this, this obsession between the client and I, looking at your seasonal sun angles, looking at your roof overhangs, looking at, how our first hot edge insulated concrete slab was basically going to, capture that seasonal winter sunlight and passively heat the house, combined with, centralized thermal mass walls. And we had performance panels on exterior walls, and then to save some money, we went for it's basically a pull and rafter roof, and insulated that. I mean, we would have liked performance on the roof, but performance panels. But it just kind of there was a bit of complexity in the architectural design, so it just worked out a bit more kind of economical to switch to a pull and rafter. But what the house does is obviously it naturally heats, and with its northern orientation, and then designing in specifically cross ventilation and stack effect. So we have these large overhangs that shade the building during summer, um, and then then it's designed to either number one, you can open it up and have cross ventilation, which is which is a good kind of Kiwi way of doing things in Northland. Um, and then secondary is looking at stack effect. So stack effect is hot air rising, and how we design that into throughout the house, so that we can you can essentially close the doors and lower windows, and then open up your top light windows. And we get a good kind of trickle form of ventilation. And I know that there is a bit of an obsession in the industry at the moment about air tightness, which is critical. But this house is actually designed, so that during winter and the summerless north, that these windows remain open by about 50 millimeters, and you just get a natural kind of airflow through the house, during the day. Um, in extreme kind of cold conditions, which happen about 3 or 4 times a year, you might close the windows if you want, but nonetheless, I mean, it's the house is actually designed to more or less kind of stay open throughout the entire year. So as far as air tightness goes, uh, you know, it's designed to passively ventilate during winter. So how's that? But look, but in saying all that, obviously, kind of, to be able to, to close up a building and to have air tightness, particularly, and the southern parts of New Zealand is really important because it does get very cold down
in the country.
there. Yeah, depending on where you live and who you are, and I mean, we all come in different shapes and sizes, right? We all like different things. I mean, geez, I mean, it's I mean, I don't want to live in a homogenous world where everything is, dare I say, sealed up. You know, just, um, but um, but then again, if but in certain situations, air tightness is appropriate, and you do have difficult sites where they might not get direct sunlight, and or you might be you might be in an urban setting where noise is an issue. There's pollutants, and you're not I mean, that is the best way to deal with the situation is by looking at air tightness and having some type of kind of mechanical ventilation system in there. So yeah, I mean, it's not to say, I think that there's just always different ways of doing things, and it's just relative to the person, and the site conditions and budget. So um, yeah, I guess obviously I have one foot in New Zealand and another foot in Southeast Asia, and I think you know you always learn different things and how important different types of principles are. Uh, but stack effect is how we deal with natural airflow, and how we basically design for cool air is always more heavy, and so it's on the ground, and it's cooler, and then it's designing houses, particularly with a passive solar house, where that cool air is kind of dragged into the house and it heats up, and then as the air kind of heats up, it rises and exits via top light windows. So I think it's. I mean, I learned how to use stack effect actually in New Zealand, on my earlier projects, but then living in a tropical environment, I guess it brings your awareness even more so to how you deal with kind of airflow and the tropics is about large overhang, shading, breezeways, stack effect, opening the houses up all year long, so you get that kind of airflow. So I guess with my architectural work, it's kind of this, again, it's this combination of different experiences, I suppose. And stack effect is, I think it's a wonderful way to naturally ventilate a building, and you can use it to ventilate during summer very adequately. And then if you're okay with slightly opening the windows during winter by about 50 millimeters, it's a great way to kind of just get a trickle ventilation effect through the house. And but once the stack effect works, I mean, there's no turning back because you see how wonderful it is, and it does create this natural kind of convection. You can feel air being sucked out of the house, and it's how can you not design that into a house? It's and Yeah, so it's yeah, I think it's a very important principle, and it's a principle that I incorporate into all of my projects. Some type of kind of natural kind of ventilation stack effect, trickle ventilation effect. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think even just recently in the last 12 months or so, I mean, I think kind of which is news to my ears as well is these conversations about kind of houses overheating in New Zealand. And I think it's I mean it's only happened. I haven't heard about that before, and it's kind of reaching kind of mainstream media as far as a topic to discuss. So it's I think it's great that it's getting that kind of getting some form of recognition. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not that complicated to design in stack effect, to be honest. It for sure. I mean, it does take some experience. But everything you need these days is out there online, and to design it into any home is even just as a contingency plan is it just makes total sense. But the thing is that I think once people kind of, because it's hard to communicate these ideas as well, because people are like, oh yeah, what are they talking about, stack effect, hot air, cold air, rising, blah blah blah. um but once people feel it and they experience it, and they feel it on their skin, and there's no going back. It's they love it, they enjoy it.
You said,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and it's I mean yeah, it is difficult to do that. People have to feel stuff, I think, and because I mean there's just so much out there, as far as publications and technical kind of content, and it's all really good. It's really good stuff, and it's all coming from different angles. But I think you've got to really kind of get out there, and as you guys are doing, and giving people the opportunity to experience these types of homes is I think I mean, how wonderful is that? I mean, it's just such a it's so great that there are these organizations that and people that do these things and create these opportunities for people to experience what it is to live in these types of homes.